in the wonderful world of Costco.
Okay, doing pans of milk, so give it a quick spray of non-stick cooking spray and wipe it out so it's got the least little amount left. So I've sprayed all the pans, and because milk really likes to stick to the pans, and without the spray I have to heat them up with a heat gun or dip them in hot water or something like that to get them back out, and it leaves a little bit of film of the milk in there. So by spraying them with just a little bit of the non-stick spray, it seems to do a much better job of getting them out. Now I'm going to be putting them in 1 pound in each pan, which is pretty close to 1 pint, so 2 cups. So, and of course, Costco. All right. So I need 16 ounces. 15 just under, because then I can kind of just a teeny bit at a time and get it right at it. And you know, I mean, a fraction one way or another is not going to be a killer, so it'll still work. And 1 pound, and then that can go in the freezer for pre-freezing. So, and tear out each one, because each one could be a little bit different. Ding, 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 we have a winner. And specific gravity of milk is different than water, so a pound really won't be 2 cups exactly. Okay, anyway, those go in the freezer for pre-freezing. One of the batches getting ready for in the future is milk. So this is 2% milk after it's been frozen. It looks completely different than thawed milk. So I've got a zipper bag labeled for milk. Each block is 1 pound. Usually I do it in 2 cups, and I think the specific gravity of milk is a little bit different than water, so I probably should have double checked that. So they might be a little off. I meant to do 2 cups, but I'm so caught up in doing 10 pounds that I did pounds. So anyway, get these out of there and into the zipper bag and back into the freezer until it's their turn. So just pop them out. And keeping them insulated from the table with this, because I want to see this. I want to keep them as cold as possible so they don't melt together. So moving quickly and get them out of there. And I can put parchment between them if I think they're going to stick. So hopefully they'll be okay. So when I've offset each one of them a little bit so that if they do kind of stick, I'll be able to grab onto them and pop them apart. So that goes back in the freezers. There's 1 gallon of milk, or 8 pounds of milk. 4 more cups of milk. 2 in each of these 2 pans. So I'll get that in one of the gallon bags, and hopefully they won't stick together too much. There's another thing I could check that I haven't been paying attention to, is how long does it take to defrost for how much water? I think it was like 3.5 hours maybe. And this was defrosting from the apples, and it's a very full jug again, so a little more than a gallon. And now it's time to get it set for the next batch, which is dairy again, just doing some simple milk. Anyway, so I'm going to finish getting this set for that one. So get the baffle out and use my little grabber thing with paper towel and make sure that it's dry and clean. So coming across the top, and I wouldn't expect any food particles or anything up here, but sometimes there's a little puddle. Yeah, so it's a teeny little bit of water on there. So come down both sides of it, and that's where if there's any particles of food, I might see it. And again, if I find anything on this, then it's time to clean. But that's coming out real clean. I'll go across each shelf just to make sure that it's, again, everything's wiped out. Okay. Yeah, everything still looks good. Go underneath, and that's where I'm most likely to find any water at this point. Okay, yeah, so that was a little bit wet, but not real terrible soggy, so that's enough. I'd read comments from a viewer, I don't know, a year or so ago that had some mold or mildew issue with this. They'd defrosted it using the defrost cycle, and then when they'd opened it, it was some mold or mildew in it. I think they said it'd been a few days though. Our door is never closed unless we're running the freeze dryer. Otherwise, if we're not getting the next batch, if I weren't getting the next batch going right now, I would leave the fan on in the door overnight. And sometimes for 2 or 3 days if I'm not getting a batch going. And then we'll turn the fan off but still leave the door open. So basically that door is never closed unless we're running a batch. Okay, so let's get this going. Get that closed. I'll get that started. And I'll go close the drain valve. Okay, drain valve is closed. So even during the pre-cooling cycle, I like to make sure that the seal ring is all the way around it. And there's a gap from here to here right now. I'll just use like a little palette knife. Give that a little twist. Okay, that's there. And then there's a space along that area and one here. On our machine, it's always had an issue with not a perfect seal sometimes, and just usually at the top and bottom. As soon as it starts vacuuming, the seal will happen, but if I'm not going to be here when it starts, I like to make sure that it's sealed and that it pulls a slight vacuum as it cools. Then I know if it has a vacuum leak before it ever starts. Okay, as soon as that's cooled, we'll get the food on the trays and get them in. The freeze dryer's been pre-freezing for about an hour, 40 minutes already, because naturally I get sidetracked with other things. It's about 30 below already. Time to get the milk in there. So we'll get them on the trays. So the milk has been pre-frozen, and well, you've already seen the milk go in and the milk blocks get popped out. We'll get those on there. They're still 1 pound blocks this way. And so I'll still end up with 2.5 pounds on a tray. Got the full blocks and the little half blocks. Okay, and it's 1873. And they will have lost a teeny bit in the freezer before they freeze. But it would have been 2.5 pounds to begin with. Okay, tray 2. Yeah, kind of stuck together a little bit. Okay. 1894. Hey, tray 3. So this is one of the reasons I pre-freeze so many things in pans, because then I can pop them out, put them in Ziplocs, and have stacks of them ready to go on the tray. It's a little extra work earlier, but it sure is nice when you go to use them. And tray 4. So altogether, that's 10 pounds of milk. which is about 1.25 gallons. Now, I also want to try to get the thermometers in here, but that's a long ways to drill in. Usually, and I should have done that with this, I usually make the blocks bigger and then leave out the middle one, and then I can move this one back and I don't have to drill as far. So let's see how that'll work, because I still want to get those in there. Oh well, that's where I've got. Okay, let's try that one. And that one's too shallow. Boy, I need the Goldilocks position of just right. Oh, that one looks like it's just right. So I've got thermometers in them. Let's go get them into the freeze dryer. When thermometers are all in there, we'll get them into the freeze dryer. Starting with tray 4 on the bottom. Oh, except I messed up on the thermometer. I forgot the thermometer. I have to go grabbing for the thermometer. Wow, that vacuum seals so fast because the cold, or the warm water, or warm air. Okay, let's try that again. Tray 4. Hey, it fits when there's nothing on the shelf already. Tray 3. Tray 2. And tray 1. All right, get that closed up. Turn that on, the cooling fan. We've got the ring seal all the way around, or the seal ring all the way around. The drain valve's closed. It's already, the air is already shrinking inside and making it a very slight vacuum, which lets me know that it's holding air. I don't have a leak somewhere. Okay, so it's ready to go. So it'll be about 3:15 in the morning when it starts the main dry cycle. And the main dry cycle on this software of the machine, or this machine's firmware, goes for 30 hours or until it believes it's dry enough, and then it skips the rest of the 30 hours. It almost always skips part of it. So we'll come back and see it later.
The freeze dryer had been going for 39 hours, and it's in the last few minutes of the final dry. But of course, I forgot to press the button for audio, so I don't have any of that. So we'll skip to 2 hours later when we're doing the first dry check.
It's been 2 hours now. Going to take the milk out and check it again, see if it's lost any weight. If it hasn't lost weight, we're going to bag it. So let's get it stopped and checked. Step 1, bypass the rest of it. Get the drain valve open, scales on, and ready. And they're all nice and toasty. It's 120, 120, 130, 110. So interestingly enough, the top one's the coolest one this time. Okay. So tray 1. So let's check the others, see if they need to go in for any additional time. Tray 2, 889. That's a 5 gram difference. So that's tray 3, 882. That's down by 5. This one was down by 5. The first one was only down by 1. They're going back in. I'm going to switch locations. Tray 4. So I'm going to take this one and put it here. So I'm rotating positions. This is 886. Okay, so after 2 hours, and tray 4, I'm putting at the top now. So now they're 1 through 4, bottom to top. Okay, so that'll start getting them cold again. All right, so after 4 hours, they've lost 14 grams of weight. That's a lot. There's no way I could bag them like that. We could kind of check them, see if there's any colder spots to see how long they might need. In fact, I'll take one out and kind of probe around in it and see what I think. Yeah, let me just randomly take one out. So I don't know if it matters. So I'm going to take this one, and again, that thermometer's way too high in there. That's one issue. If I were just judging from how they look and feel, I would have taken them out the first time. Now that's colder there. That's still dropping. Okay. It's quite a ways back to see it that way. I really may need to make a drilling jig so I can get it right each time. Yeah, I should figure out a way to make a drilling jig because I know where it needs to be. If this is the thickness of the food, with the bottom of the tray, the thermometer probe needs to be about 1/3 off the bottom. So about 2/3 of the way down, 1/3 up from the bottom of from the tray. That seems to be the coldest spot each time that I've found ice in it. That's where it's been. Okay, that's not done, or it wasn't done. That lost way too much during that time. So there's no way I can stop it there. So I'm gonna give it another couple hours. Well, probably give it 3 hours. Let's see, it's 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, 5:30. I can probably be back in by 5:30. I'll give it another 2 or 3 hours. We'll come back and check it then. More time. Drain valve. Drain valve is closed. Continue. And it's plenty cool. Okay, seal is good right away. We'll be back. And we're back. It's been about 4 hours. It's time to check the milk. If it stopped losing weight, that means it was dry 4 hours ago, and we can use that time for the how long did it take. So let's get it stopped, get them out, and check them, and hopefully it's done. As we say, this is not rocket surgery. Whoops, wrong direction. I should remember to mention, the reason I skipped the last 15 minutes is because the heaters turn off during the last 15 minutes, and I want to make sure I take them out while they're still toasty warm, so that there's no chance of any moisture in the air condensing on the food or on the trays. Okay, opening the drain valve, and we'll see what we have. And tray 1 is on the bottom now. So tray 1, okay, it's only down by 1 now. That, okay. Well, we'll check them all because tray 1 was pretty good last time. So let's check tray 2. That's still down by almost 3. It's a little more than 886. So 886, so 2.5. So it was probably enough, but I'm not going to chance it. So tray 3, 879. That's 3 more also. And tray 4, 884. That's another 2. Okay. And putting that one back in. So, how much did they go down? Okay. during that part it still went down another 8 grams. I'm not going to take it out. I'm going to put it in for another hour or two. Probably 2. That'll bring it to about 8:20 in the evening. Still plenty of time to defrost it and get the next batch in tonight. So let's get it restarted for a couple more hours. I'm going to start with closing the drain valve, then adding time. So more dry time. Drain valve is closed now, and it's plenty cool. And I'm going to give it 2:15 so I can stop it at 2 and still have it warm. We'll be back in 2 more hours. Been another full 2 hours. Let's get that stopped and check them. Oh darn it, wrong direction. 2 hours later, we're back to check it again. All the thermometers inside are at least 110 degrees. Hopefully it's done now. Get the drain valve opened. Okay, so 2 hours ago we had 8 grams of loss for the previous 4 hours. So now we're checking for this last 2 hours to find out if there's been additional loss. So tray 1, no change. That's good. Okay, tray 2. Okay, no change. Tray 3. And no change. Okay. So the previous 4 hours looks like it was enough, but I gotta check because I don't trust it. And no change. Okay, so there's no change, so gonna hit the defrost, or no defrost. Gonna turn that fan off. Okay, I'm gonna unplug the timer for the oil filtration pump. All right, so we'll get the little defrost baffle into place. Going to get the fan in place and get it defrosting. All right, and then we'll get this moved over. Power usage on the milk was 31.43 kilowatt hours. I'll reset it for the next batch. Okay, now it's set for the next one. The milk is done. It took about 45 hours. It says 47 hours on the timer because of the final check of 2 hours. But it did not lose any weight in the last 2 hours, which means it was done 2 hours ago. I'm going to bag these in 1 quart portions, probably in 1 quart bags also. I'm going to powder them first, but I'm not going to use a food processor or anything like that because I don't want to add more air and moisture from the air into them. So I'll put them in a Ziploc, just crush them lightly with the rolling pin and then get them in the bag. I want to leave them exposed to the air as short of time as possible because they will be pulling moisture out of the air. Everything that's freeze-dried is pulling moisture out of the air because there's more moisture in the air than in the food. Even if you live in a very low humidity area, the food is essentially 0, so everything is higher than that. And if you live in Georgia, you're going to have a lot more moisture, especially in the summertime. So I'm going to get these bagged as quickly as possible and then get everything defrosted and on to the next batch. So let's get these bagged. Okay, I am going to weigh all these and get the gross weights, but I really don't need it because I know that each one of these blocks is a 16-ounce portion and this is an 8-ounce portion. So all I have to do is bag them that way. But I do want to get the weights so that I have the record of it. So I'll get the thermometers out of all of them and get those weights. So 880 on tray 1. And tray 2, 877. Tray 3, 869. And tray 4, 873. I'm going to bag these with 2 of the big blocks in a bag and 4 of the little blocks in the bags, because each one of these is 16 ounces. So that'll give me 32 ounces in each bag. So I have my bags labeled that it's milk, what day it went into the freeze dryer, batch number, and that it's approximately 32 ounces and that it needs X amount of water. So I'll fill in that as soon as I get the numbers. I'm going to put the blocks of milk in the zipper bag and then crush them. So I'm not sure if I can. So trying to get that up there. So, and these half ones are going to be going, all 4 of those will go in the same bag. So I might as well get those started. And that way I can take this one and just kind of shake the bits down. I'll make sure it's in there. All right, so there's 32 ounces of milk. All right, and you can see it powders just immensely easily. You know, I've got the rolling pin, but that might be just more than even necessary. Okay, so the milk is all powdered. I've got 32 ounces. Now, actually, I should put this one on ounces because I'm dealing, well, I need the grams just for my weight. And then I can switch it to ounces. So 101.7 grams, 3.59 ounces. And so another 32 ounce portion. So it doesn't even need a rolling pin, it just completely powders. And one of the good things about powdering the milk is if there is any wet spot left, you'll see it on the bag. I had that happen once. I just dumped everything back on the tray, put it back in the freeze dryer, and gave it another couple hours. But that was before I started weighing every tray, or all the trays, and putting them back in for 2 hours automatically. In fact, that's one of the reasons I started doing that, is because you can't tell just by breaking a few pieces, because you might miss it. The trays combined are over 500 square inches. You could easily have one little spot somewhere that still has moisture in it and not find it. By weighing the whole thing, it's less likely to end up having a wet spot anywhere and having it ignored or missed or overlooked, because you're weighing everything. You're checking the entire batch that way. You're not just sampling spots. This is 2% milk, which means it still has 2% milk fat. And whole milk is only about 3.5%, so it still has most of the fats. And I've seen in different places people talking about fats not working in the freeze dryer, and of course fat eventually will go rancid. However, if you look up the scientific papers for how things go rancid, there's 2 main types. One is oxygen related and one's water related. We're taking care of both of those. Now, another thing that comes up on a regular basis is if you vacuum seal the bag. So if you use a vacuum system to take the air out of the bag, do you need an oxygen absorber? Well, I guess you could decide yourself if you want to. There is no chance that I'm going to try to store anything long-term without an oxygen absorber. Because if you vacuum out all of the air that you can, that's an important piece, all the air that you can, you still have air in that bag. Let's say you get out 90% of the air. That means you've crushed it by 90%. You still have 10% of the oxygen that you started with. The science for things going rancid says you need an extremely small amount of oxygen, and that oxygen is still in that bag. Vacuuming out the vacuum chamber like this. So if you have like a jar, a canning jar, and you put it in the freeze dryer and you vacuum it that way, now you really have gotten rid of almost every molecule of oxygen. If you put it under that full vacuum, that's probably going to do very, very well. But if you're putting it in a Mylar bag, you are not going to get rid of the oxygen. It's impossible with a normal system without crushing everything in there, because it has to get rid of all that space. And I'm going to go with what the commercial industry standards would be, which is you're still going to put oxygen absorbers in. Because even if, let's say, you manage to get every molecule of oxygen out of the bag, oxygen is going to be going back in that bag slowly forever. There is nothing you can do with these bags to prevent oxygen from going in there. The better the bag, the slower it is. And maybe it's going to be good for 50 years or 20 years. But you're still going to, and if you're not even using a Mylar bag, for instance, if you were using a seal-a-meal bag, those aren't made for this. They are letting oxygen and moisture go through at a far greater rate than these. But you can choose. I'm not going to tell anybody that they have to put oxygen absorbers in. I would think that the best of both worlds would be vacuuming and an oxygen absorber. Now again, if you're pulling the full vacuum and you're putting it in a jar, you're probably going to be pretty good. Or if you're pulling a full vacuum and putting it in one of these, it's going to be better than if you're using a seal-a-meal type. As long as you're using a bag that has a very low transmission rate for moisture and oxygen. But a regular bag like this is basically worthless. I would say these would be good for months. So if I'm going to go on a camping trip and I'm going to use this in the next few weeks, this would be fine. And I probably wouldn't bother with an oxygen absorber if I know I'm going to use it. There's really no need to it, and it'd be kind of a waste. But if I want to store it for years, this isn't going to do it. I wouldn't even use this kind of bag with an oxygen absorber, because moisture is still going to go through this bag too. These are permeable to oxygen and to moisture. And so are the seal-a-meal bags. They're just a seal-a-meal bag type thing is far, far better than this bag. It's just not as good as a Mylar bag. The aluminum coating is an important piece of it. I'll add some links to some of the science papers that I've been looking at. And there's a really good encyclopedia book for food. I don't know what it's called, so I'll have to look that up. I could add that here. All right, so I'll be able to use that math. These are all 32-ounce batches. So each bag will make 32 ounces. And so we just need to subtract the weight of the net weight of what's in it from the 32, and that'll give us how much water is needed to rehydrate it. So each one of these bags makes about 32 ounces, and it needs 28.4 ounces of water added to it. Ta-da! I'm going to double check the totals. Mass, grams. The way they're bagged, the lightest one to the heaviest one is still less than 1 gram apart. That is really, really close. Okay, those are ready for oxygen absorbers and sealing. I'm going to put the 300cc oxygen absorbers in each bag and seal them up. And I'll take the extras, the leftovers, and reseal this bag for another time. All right, so I'm going to tuck an oxygen absorber along the side of each one of them. So when I got to be gentle with them because the powderiness of it. So just carefully getting rid of any of the extra air and zippering them shut. So kind of moving in slow motion so that I don't make the milk powder puff up out of there. So next, I'll heat seal these guys. Okay, and then that first bag, I'm going to do a double time to make sure that it's completely up to temperature. All right. Sealing them as high up on the bag as I can to leave myself room for future seals. Or if I want to take out some and make 500 milliliters of milk. Of course, I'd have to do additional math because this time I'm marking things in ounces, which is kind of rare, except I do tend to do the liquids in ounces, whereas I do the solids more in grams. Except for this series, I'm trying to do everything in pounds because I wanted to do 500 pounds. All right, all the bags are sealed. Just one more thing I like to do, adding a gross weight to the bottom of each bag, so I'll know if there's ever a problem. 126 grams. 126 grams for this whole unit. So if it starts to pull in moisture from the air, I'll know right away. Those are all bagged and ready to store in the bins. We've got our 5 little bags of milk now. Each one of them is about 32 ounces or a quart. So that's the full batch in just 5 bags. Things that powder fit in a small amount of bags. Sometimes I'll use a smaller bag if I know that I won't want to rehydrate a whole quart at a time. But in this case, this is fine. And I can always measure out a portion of it and do half of it or a cup. It's not a big deal. Let's get them in the bin. Okay, so got to move them off the top of there. There's our last ones and our Granny Smith and the bags that have sucked down by 20 or 21% after the oxygen's been taken out. So we'll go ahead and add the milk to those. All right, so yeah, 5 bags of milk adding to that list. So that's it for this one. The next one is moving on to the starch kind of thing, and it's going to be rice. Let's move on. Let me rant for just a second. I see people on the internet that are doing freeze drying, and they say you don't need an oxygen absorber in the bag. Do you think if commercial manufacturers could bag their product and save the 8 cents a piece for oxygen absorbers, or 6 cents or 4 cents at a commercial price, at a wholesale price, that they wouldn't in a heartbeat. I remember where I used to work, if we could shave 1/10 of a penny per unit off, we could buy hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment for that, with that savings. We would do it in a heartbeat. They don't put the oxygen absorbers in the bag because they look cute or because it's fun. They put them in the bag because it's needed. In commercial places, I don't know if all of them are, but they're probably nitrogen flushed before they drop the oxygen absorber in and seal it. So they've gotten rid of all of the air, and then they still put in an oxygen absorber. I could be wrong. They could be using atmospheric air and then putting in an oxygen absorber, but they put in an oxygen absorber. They do it for a reason. Okay, fats going rancid. Yes, fats go rancid. There's scientific papers about fat going rancid and how it works, the mechanisms. I'll link a couple of papers here, right up here, or right over here, or down here in the comments. I'll link them somewhere. You can look them up. You can read them. They're very interesting. If you control for the major factors of it, you can prolong the food without having that trouble. Again, commercial makers, not picking out anyone in particular, but commercial makers of ground beef, for instance, cooked ground beef in a bag or in a can, look it up. Look at the percentage of fat in that bag. The one brand has, I think, 15 grams of fat in a 36-gram serving. Could be a 39-gram serving. Anyway, it's a lot of fat in it percentage-wise. If you calculate it backwards to how much it weighed before they freeze-dried it, it works out to a fairly lean cut. It might be 3 or 4% fat at that time. But it's still, when it's bagged, it's 30-40% fat by weight. They guarantee them for 30 years. And why can they do that? Because they've gotten rid of the oxygen. And they've put it in a bag that's not very permeable to moisture or oxygen. When we bag stuff in our bags, oxygen and moisture are going to be going into that bag forever. There's nothing that you can do to prevent that if you're just using a bag. It's going to be going through. All we can do is control the rate by using the best bag we can and absorbing the oxygen if it gets in there. Okay, anyway, I'll link some things. End of rant, and who knows if this will even make it to the postings.